While a 12-year-old girl remained trapped inside a car under intense heat, the only adults who could have saved her were busy using drugs, unaware that every passing minute increased the danger. What they also did not imagine was that all that activity was being recorded by security cameras, and it would be precisely those images that would reveal a disturbing truth. A desperate call to the emergency services set off a case that, in its first few minutes, looked like nothing more than an accident. On the other end of the line, a man said a girl had gotten trapped inside a car. He explained that they had gone out to fetch a spare key after realizing the vehicle was locked, but by the time they managed to get back, it was already too late. The girl was no longer responding. As the dispatcher asked questions to understand what was going on, the man kept repeating that the girl had passed away. His voice betrayed desperation, but it also revealed confusion about everything that had happened. Minutes later, emergency crews headed to the address they had been given, even though the gravity of the call already made it clear they would hardly find a different outcome. The victim was Christina Pangalangan, a 12-year-old girl who had remained inside a car for hours under extremely high temperatures, with no way at all to call for help. What initially seemed to be a case of negligence would begin to reveal far more serious circumstances as the investigation moved forward. The case took place in August 2019 in South Carolina, a state known for its extremely hot summers and intense humidity. Under those conditions, the inside of a closed vehicle could reach dangerous temperatures within minutes. That morning, Christina went with her mother, Rita Pangalangan, to the home of Rita's boyfriend, Larry King. That destination was part of the family's routine. Larry needed to talk to Rita about something he considered urgent, and when they arrived at the property, they decided to leave Christina in the car while they went inside to sort things out. What was supposed to last only a few minutes ended up turning into a mistake that would completely change the lives of everyone involved. Without noticing the time slip by, the two of them stayed inside the house while Christina remained alone in the vehicle. At that moment, no one imagined that the decision made that early afternoon would have irreversible consequences. During the initial stages of the investigation, detectives discovered that Christina had severe physical limitations from birth. She lived with cerebral palsy and other conditions that completely affected her mobility. The girl could not speak, used a wheelchair, and depended entirely on other people for nearly all of her daily activities. She also had no way to open the vehicle's door by herself, nor could she call for help if she were in danger. This information completely changed how the case was analyzed from that point on. Christina had no possibility whatsoever of escaping that situation on her own. The police also gathered information about Rita. She had worked for more than 2 decades as a teacher at an educational center in the region and was seen by colleagues and students as a dedicated professional. Years earlier, she had even received recognition for her work with children. Larry also had a close relationship with Christina since he began dating Rita about 4 years before. People close to them said he showed affection for the girl, which made it even harder to understand how all of that had happened. With the confirmation of Christina's death, Larry and Rita were taken in to give statements. Early in the conversation, Larry revealed a detail that immediately caught the detective's attention. He said he had barely slept the night before and admitted that he had used illicit substances shortly before the events. While he was answering questions, the police already had images from the home's security cameras. The recording showed Christina being placed in the back seat of the car while Larry and Rita stood outside arguing. The investigators then began to reconstruct every minute of that morning. Larry explained that he had learned of a rumor involving Rita and decided to confront her. The conversation quickly turned into an argument. According to him, the two of them kept talking about the relationship while Christina remained inside the vehicle. Up to that point, much of his account seemed consistent with what appeared in the security camera footage. However, there were still many unanswered questions. When Rita began giving her statement, the investigators noticed that her version had important differences. She said that Larry had put Christina in the back seat, fastened her seatbelt, and turned on the air conditioning before going back inside the house. She also said that she returned to the property only to get a pack of cigarettes and insisted that she stayed inside for just 2 or 3 minutes. The investigators, though, had already spoken at length with Larry and were also reviewing the images captured by the cameras. In response to her answers, the officer interrupted Rita and made it clear that he knew that version did not match what had actually happened. Under pressure, she changed her answer and began to say that maybe she had stayed inside the house for between 5 and 10 minutes, though she kept insisting that she did not remember the exact amount of time. The inconsistency drew even more attention because the investigators had already put together a preliminary timeline. The recording showed that Christina got into the car around 11:42. About an hour later, Rita appeared briefly near the vehicle, but she only did a quick check before going back inside the residence. After that, no one returned to the car for several hours. These details became fundamental to the investigation because they showed that there had been several opportunities to notice that Christina was still alone in the vehicle. The investigators also tried to understand what happened when Larry and Rita finally realized that the car was locked. Larry said he tried to open the door using makeshift tools while they waited for a spare key to arrive. During the interrogation, he revealed that he had even suggested breaking one of the windows to get Christina out right away. According to his account, Rita rejected that possibility because she believed it would be cheaper to get another key than to damage the vehicle. That statement caught the officers' attention. At that moment, they questioned why no one had made getting Christina out of the car as quickly as possible the top priority, especially considering that she had no way to get out on her own. While Larry answered the questions, the investigators began to realize that the case could be far more complex than it had seemed in the first few hours. And as new details emerged, the security camera footage would play a decisive role in showing what really happened that day. As Larry continued answering questions, investigators began to notice that some information started to make sense when compared to the images captured by the security cameras. The recording showed part of the couple's movements during that day and helped piece together an increasingly precise timeline. Up until that moment, Larry insisted that the whole situation had started because of an argument with Rita. According to him, the conversation grew bigger than they had imagined and ended up making the two of them completely lose track of time. Even so, the police had the impression that important pieces were still missing from that story. The images captured by the cameras began to be analyzed frame by frame. It was exactly during that analysis that investigators realized the couple had stayed inside the residence for much longer than both of them suggested during their testimonies. That detail became decisive because it showed that Christina remained alone inside the vehicle for practically that entire period, without anyone coming back to check on how she was doing. As the testimony continued, the police started asking questions that were not directly linked to the car or to the time Christina remained alone. The goal now was to understand the state Larry was in that day. During the conversation, he showed remorse and admitted that he had been facing problems related to the use of illegal substances for many years. He said he had already received several pieces of advice to give up that habit, but he acknowledged that he had never managed to change completely. At various moments, Larry stated that he wished he had made different decisions that day. Despite that, the investigators made it clear that the focus was not just on his remorse, but on understanding exactly how all those events had unfolded. The team responsible for the case needed to know whether the use of those substances had directly influenced the choices made by him and Rita during the hours. Christina remained inside the car. The investigators decided to dig deeper into that subject. Larry confirmed that he had used illegal substances the night before, and also reported that Rita had used a small amount. According to him, she had ingested part of the substance mixed into a drink, and had also used again on the day everything happened. That statement immediately caught the police's attention, since up to that point Rita had not mentioned anything similar during her own interrogation. From that moment on, the investigation began to consider that the state of the two adults could have directly affected their ability to make decisions during that day. Even so, the investigators knew that only Larry's word would not be enough to confirm that information. It was necessary to confront Rita, and also to wait for the tests carried out by the forensics team. When it was Rita's turn to answer about that subject, her version was completely different. She only confirmed that she had taken a prescribed medication, but she denied having used any other illegal substance. She showed confidence when answering, and insisted that the tests would not show anything besides the medication she claimed to be taking. The investigators, however, explained that samples had already been collected, and that the laboratory results would allow them to confirm exactly which substances were present in her body. Even faced with that warning, Rita continued denying any use. The difference between the two testimonies increased the police's suspicion even more. While Larry admitted his own use and even said that Rita had also consumed substances, she completely rejected that possibility. The contradictions began to pile up at several points in the investigation. First, the time she claimed to have stayed inside the house. Then the information that the air conditioning was supposedly on. Now, another discrepancy emerged involving the possible use of substances before Christina's end. Another important point also became part of the investigation. The toxicology tests confirmed that both Larry and Rita were under the influence of narcotics when they were questioned, indicating that both of them had also consumed substances during the period Christina remained inside the car. The confirmation reinforced the suspicions raised during the testimonies and showed that Larry had told the truth when admitting the use, while Rita tried to deny that fact in front of the police. The investigators realized there was a way to keep Larry talking. They returned to the subject that had sparked the argument between the couple. Larry explained that he had discovered shortly before the events that Rita was supposedly involved in a relationship with someone else. According to him, that information triggered a heated argument that morning. Still visibly shaken, he said he asked Rita several times to leave his house, but she stayed put. The investigators weren't interested only in the couple's relationship. Their goal was to understand how that quarrel had influenced the decisions made that day and why Christina ended up completely forgotten. With the recordings in hand, the police began confronting Larry about every move captured by the cameras. They asked exactly how Christina had been placed in the back seat. Larry claimed he couldn't recall all the details because he was nervous and upset at the time. The investigators, however, described what appeared in the footage. According to them, Larry put Christina into the vehicle in a hurried manner. Then both he and Rita had to lean in again to adjust her before closing the door. The officers drew attention to another important detail. Even though Larry said he couldn't remember the time or all the actions he took, the cameras clearly showed every step of the couple's movements that morning. As the interrogation progressed, Larry insisted he never intended to cause any harm to the girl. He said he only wanted Rita to leave the property, and that the whole situation started because of the argument between the two. From that point on, investigators began reconstructing the full sequence of events. They explained that after the initial argument, Larry and Rita made up inside the residence. The footage showed that hours later, the two left the house talking normally, walking together, and showing that the tension had completely subsided. Only then did Rita decide to check on Christina. It was at that moment she realized the car was locked. Even after that discovery, the behavior captured by the cameras continued to draw the investigators' attention. Larry and Rita tried to open the vehicle for a few minutes, but failing to do so, they returned to the house's porch, where they remained seated for about half an hour while waiting for a solution. During the interrogation, Larry stated that he believed the car was still running and that the air conditioning remained on, information that would later be challenged by the investigation. Noticing that Larry was beginning to show signs of dejection, the investigators decided to increase the psychological pressure. They pointed out a detail recorded by the cameras throughout that entire period. Even the residents' dog stayed close to the car longer than those responsible for Christina themselves. Next, the police raised a hypothesis to observe Larry's reaction. They asked whether Rita might have seen her daughter's death as a way to eliminate a problem in her life and continue the relationship without having to care for the girl. Larry did not agree with that possibility. He showed surprise at the suggestion and said he did not want to believe Rita was capable of acting that way. Even so, the investigators kept insisting that Rita could be trying to shift all the responsibility onto him. The strategy aimed to make Larry perceive his partner's contradictions and reveal new details of the story. Shortly after, Larry again explained how everything had happened. He said Rita had started the car and turned on the air conditioning before going back inside the house to get a pack of cigarettes. According to him, when she returned, she found all the doors locked and believed that it happened due to an unexpected defect. While repeating this version, Larry began to show that he no longer fully trusted Rita. Gradually, he admitted he believed he had been deceived by her on several occasions, and stated that if he had realized Christina remained trapped inside the car during all that time, he would have broken the glass immediately to get her out. He also recounted that similar arguments had happened before. According to Larry, on other occasions, Rita also placed Christina in the car while the two of them stayed outside arguing, although he claimed a situation like that one had never occurred. This information reinforced the understanding that leaving the girl waiting in the vehicle was part of a behavior that had happened before. With all the information gathered, investigators concluded there were enough elements to hold both adults responsible. Larry was placed under arrest on charges related to Christina's death. During the arrest, he showed despair when he realized he was being taken into custody, and he heard from the officers that his own actions, combined with Rita's, had led to the girl's death. Shortly after, it was Rita's turn. She again claimed she had turned on the air conditioning before entering the house, but investigators told her the evidence was not consistent with that account. The officers pointed out that Christina had remained inside the vehicle for approximately 6 hours, and that the evidence collected dismantled her attempt to place all the blame on her partner. Rita was also placed under arrest. Shaken, she insisted it had all been an accident, but investigators stressed that the long period Christina had gone without any assistance was incompatible with the version she had maintained throughout the entire interrogation. Years later, in September 2023, Larry King and Rita Pangalangan were tried for Christina's death. During the trial, the judge analyzed each one's conduct separately. In his decision, he considered that Larry had acted with extreme negligence by placing Christina in the car and leaving her in that situation. Regarding Rita, he concluded her responsibility was even greater, noting that she had failed to act to protect her own daughter throughout the entire period when there was still a chance to prevent the tragedy. At the end of the proceedings, Larry was sentenced to 32 years in prison. Rita received a sentence of 37 years. The death of Christina Pangalangan was not the result of a single mistake. The investigation showed there were several opportunities for the situation to be noticed and stopped before it reached the worst outcome. While a completely dependent girl remained alone inside the car, the only two adults responsible for protecting her were involved in an argument. Reconciling